There was one time when my daughter was very young and she got stung by a bee. And so, of course, my husband and I did the natural thing, which was to completely panic. We were new parents and we didn't know what to do. And so we were in a heated situation. All our communication best practices sort of flew away. And he was saying something to me and I wasn't able to hear him, and we were just sort of yelling back and forth at each other in a panic of trying to talk about what we were going to do to help her with this bee sting. And of course it really was fine. We just needed to give her a little Benadryl and everything was fine. But it showed just how quickly communication can break down in a challenging situation.
Probably the most difficult communication experience that I've ever had was when my brother was battling cancer for 2 years, and he was being treated in New York City, but he lived out of state and he lived alone. And since I had the most flexible work schedule at that time, I was voted the person to be his point person, his liaison with the hospital and his care. But I was very happy to do that. And right off the bat, I knew we were going to have a problem because he had emergency surgery, and then we had to meet right afterwards with his new oncologist. So it was myself, my husband, my brother, and the oncologist. So I said, do you have CART, which is where someone types for you and you read captioning in real time? And of course, they've never heard of that because there's very little awareness about people with hearing loss. I said, you have someone that could type. They didn't. So there I sat in the room, and I was speech reading, and then my husband said he would jot notes for me when I didn't get something. That's what we usually did. So they were talking about my brother's history, and I was following okay. And then my brother said to the oncologist, how much time do I have? So I'm focusing to speech read this. And when the doctor answered, he turned his head, and I missed what he said. And I looked at my husband, and he just looked at the doctor, and I knew it was terrible because nobody was saying anything, but I didn't know what had happened. And I couldn't ask him to repeat it because I knew it was terrible news. I didn't want my brother to hear it again. So 2 hours later, when we got back to my apartment and my brother took a nap, I said to my husband, well, and he said he has 1 year, 2 if he's lucky, for 2 hours. I didn't know what my brother had been told. And then we moved on for 2 years. I went to more surgeries, procedures, tests with my brother, and I could never get accommodation. So I was bringing friends in to type. Sometimes they gave me a typist from the hospital. They were awful. You know, just imagine sitting there with 3 or 4 doctors and everyone's firing questions. And the person that would have to interpret for me, because I could speech read him most of the time, was my brother. So he had to keep repeating this negative, awful information over and over again. I mean, he was dealing with enough with his own illness. But then he also had to deal with my disability. He didn't really want to talk about the bad stuff anymore. I don't think he wanted me to know how bad it was. So he just sort of avoided interpreting for me and kind of left me in the dark. And I understood that. And then when he was very ill and he was home with hospice, he was becoming paralyzed. So the hospice people, he lost the ability to write. So the hospice people were our ears, and they would just write notes back and forth because we couldn't even really, we could speech read a little bit, and he was losing his hearing from the chemotherapy. So I mean, it was just, you know, the worst case scenario. But again, you know, my brother died in peace and we did the best we could. But again, it helped me to find something that I love to do in my life and gave me purpose in my life from my brother in that experience.